hour. And what you'll notice here is there's one storm on the back edge here that if that one held together, that could impact the Louisville area. And then we have a larger cluster of thunderstorms that is very likely to affect areas like Oldham County, Jennings County, Jefferson County, through Henry County in the northeastern part of our area. This western edge and the west areas west of I-65, south of the river, are going to be areas that we do have to watch in terms of whether we're going to see the full potential for severe on that. So now let me take you back over, and what we're going to look at here is the active warning that we have currently in effect here. So this is a tornado warning here. First, I'll start you off with the severe thunderstorm warnings, and then we'll go over to that tornado warning here. So severe thunderstorm warning in effect for Jackson and Jennings County, and then we also have that tornado warning that's in effect for Jennings County. This is a look at specifically the warning for the tornado warning. This is in effect until 1:45. Now, Rick DeLuca has been looking at this storm, and what's interesting about this storm here, Rick, and you're looking at it on 3D, is what you can see it looks like are potentially two areas of rotation, one north of Northford and then one really almost along that Jackson and Jennings County line.
Right, just to the north and to the east of the Hayden area, we are watching a secondary area of rotation. This is not a supercellular storm which is out ahead of the main line. This is actually embedded within the main line of storms which is pressing on through. And this is the sort of scenario where you can see these sort of wrap around, these twirling of the winds with height, and you can get a brief tornado with some of these storms, which is why it's not just a damaging wind threat. That's the primary threat by all, with gusts possibly between 60 and 80 miles an hour. But the other threats are brief tornadoes, right, and we cannot even rule out the potential mark for some hail as well.
Yeah, and you know, that's the nice thing here is we have not seen a lot of huge hail out of these storms, so that is one positive. But the potential exists. I mean, it's very warm, and you talked about this. Dew point's at 75 degrees outside right now.
Right.
So it is very, very warm out there. In terms of when to expect the area where, if there was a tornado, let me give you a track on it so you have an idea of when specifically you would expect this in your area. The area of rotation, since it's a two-tier area, I'm going to actually put a couple of different, for lack of a better term, I'll put a couple tracks on it for you so that we can get that general area, again, because it's not necessarily one area that we have rotation on. So here we'll go back over to that. Let me take you out to a wider perspective quickly so that we can give a full track on that storm. Again, moving to the south at around 40 miles an hour. Normally we do tight tracks on these things, but since this thing's moving so quickly, I kind of have to move it out a little bit further. So timelines put this in North Vernon 2 minutes. You got to take your tornado safety precautions. West of North Vernon right now, if you live near Hayden, it's time to get into interior room, center part of your house, keep away from windows. Levitt 10 minutes from now, Deputy 20 minutes from now, 24 minutes in the Worcester area. And Rick, it looks like now they've also extended that severe thunderstorm warning as well further off to the south. That one now includes Washington County. It includes through Jefferson County, Indiana. So we have a couple more counties now included on that. I'm going to put the actual warning here on the screen for you so you can see. This is Jefferson, Scott, Trimble, and Washington counties. So Jefferson, Scott, Trimble, and Washington counties. Remember, this is not Jefferson County, Kentucky. This is Jefferson County, Indiana. And the warning here is for winds to 60 miles an hour and a tornado possible. So one thing we've noted here, Rick, with these warnings is originally they were warning for 70-mile-an-hour winds. So maybe we're seeing a trend here coming down. Regardless, the wind energy is still solid, although interestingly enough, I'd say the wind energy is a little better for the storms that are going to arrive tonight, depending on how this unfolds.
Right, and that's sort of the scenario with this. Just because you have one round of storms roll through, don't say, okay, oh, we're all done. You can go outside and wander around, because this is coming in multiple waves. We're going to see one come through during the afternoon, another one later on this evening, and potentially linking up with a third and final one during the overnight hours tonight. So don't let your guard down. Multiple waves of showers and storms rolling on through, and it is likely that we're going to see severe weather continuing for the next several hours, moving across the area. Wind damage by far the main threat, but we also have this ongoing tornado warning for Jennings County up in southern Indiana, just to the Hayden area, one specifically that we're watching very carefully. You can see all of Kentuckiana now included in that severe thunderstorm watch box. That will remain in effect until 8 o'clock tonight. So until 8 o'clock, you need to be on your toes for severe weather rolling through the area from the north down to the south. We're also going to look at our other radar. In this one, we have a split screen. On the left-hand side, we're looking at velocities, and we look inside the storm at the winds. We have the greens going toward the radar, reds away from the radar, and you can see right around the Hayden area, not real defined circulation, but a little bit of a couplet trying to form in there, and we're watching that for some spin in the atmosphere, the possibility of a tornado ongoing. So for Jennings County, until 1:45, you should be in your safe place. Whether it's a basement, that's the best place to be. But if you do not have a basement, you want to put as many walls between you and outside as possible. So right now, just to the south of Hayden, south of 50, if you are traveling 50 or know someone in Jennings County along that road, make sure you give them a heads up and let them know there's a dangerous storm rolling through, and there are more to come. We're looking at this storm in the other perspective. On the right-hand side, this is called an NROT, or normalized rotation, and it basically tells us which areas have the most rotation, and that's why we're sort of focusing on Hayden, right?
Whenever we see green in that rotation, we kind of refer to that as green means go for tornadoes, because when you get these normalized rotation values that Rick's showing you there, when they go over normally the blue into the green, we do normally get some quick spin-ups. So there is that concern right now, specifically just to the south of Hayden here, and then that secondary rotation. Rick, if you could take me out just a touch on that. I want to see what we're looking at near North Vernon. That's also a spinner. But no question, south of Hayden looks like the greatest threat of a tornado. So if that holds, you're talking about that going just west of Lovett to around the Paris Crossing area. So just west of Lovett through around the Paris Crossing area. I'm going to take us back into single panel mode. And I want to show you specifically when we talk about these reds and greens, what rotation specifically means. I want to give you a little bit more of a sense of what we're talking about here. The way radar works is it sends out a beam. Now that beam can tell whether winds are going towards it or away from it. Now this becomes key. It can't actually see full rotation. It can only see what's coming towards it or going away from it. So what it's seeing right here near the Hayden area, the winds are going towards the radar in the green and going away from the radar in the red. And what that does is that is showing us that there's an area of rotation right over the Hayden area. Now I want to, if we could, Rick, go over to reflectivity on that so we can see what's going on in the same area. And I'm going to put my finger right over that area so you can see we actually have this little hook that's occurring right near the Hayden area. This goes well with the potential for a quick tornado. If you live in Hayden, if you live in Lovett, if you live in Paris Crossing, I need to get in an interior room. We use the word duck, which means downstairs. If you can get underneath something, like a table, anything sturdy, that's a good place to go. You want to go to the center part of your house. And it's always critical to keep away from windows. Obviously, with flying debris that can occur in tornadoes, and even if it doesn't produce a tornado, still flying debris can break down windows. So you want to stay away from the glass. A center part of the house is always going to be the best spot. Rick, if you could take me a little bit further to the north, I just want to look at these two notches that have occurred within that line. And yeah, there's one here that's really close to the North Vernon area. I know people tend to go outside and look at these storms and, try to get an eye on things. Look, I can just request, Hayden, North Vernon, Lovett, the time for you to go outside and look is past. This is the time where I need you to take action and get into your safe location. I'll let you know areas if you can look. I know that tends to be, we're not going to, ignore the fact that people tend to look at storms, but I just want to ask you from North Vernon, Lovett, and Hayden to not look at these storms right now, to bring things inside. This is not the time to be outside, Rick. We always want to watch these things really closely. I know there's kind of a fascination with tornadoes, but the time comes where you have to take action.
Right, so until 1:45, if you live in Jennings County, you need to be in your safe place, wherever it may be. You have that plan, you need to put into action as we speak. And areas like Lovett, you are next in line. So areas from North Vernon, we are seeing some spin near you, one just to the south of the Hayden area. And what I want to do is I'm going to switch back over now to our other radar. And this one, we're going to track this storm as it continues its journey down to the south and to the east. Within that tornado warning, if you live inside that red box, you want to take your precautions as this goes and dives its way south and east. Areas like Lovett, 13 minutes, Paris Crossing, another location you should be in your safe place. Deputy DuPont, in the next 20 to 40 minutes, the potential for a tornado is ongoing, moving toward your area. And one other concern, aside from the obvious damaging wind threat, the tornado threat, and the hail threat, is that we've seen a lot of rain in the past few days. It is not going to take winds much over 50 miles an hour to see some trees down and get some power outages. So that's something you want to keep in mind. Hopefully, in southern Indiana, you are already prepared. But if you're watching us and you're in southern Kentucky and you have an hour or two to maybe get out and go ahead and prepare, grab some batteries, charge up your phones, whatever you want to do, a good idea to go ahead and do that immediately. So, Mark, we're actually going to watch this storm continue down to the south and to the east. We're all going to also put on this hail scope and kind of look inside some of these storms and see if we can find some hail right there as you look to the west of Geneva around Sand Creek, Jonesville. We're watching hail continue, maybe a little bit out towards Seymour, but by far this is more of a damaging wind threat at the moment, with a possibility of a brief spin up and a brief tornado within that tornado warning in Jennings County.
And by the way, we are on Periscope here as well, so if you're away from your TV, just want you to know there's a couple ways that you can actually watch us for this tornado coverage. You can watch us on TV, you can watch us from WDRB.com, where we will stream our coverage, and then you can also watch on Periscope, and I'll be able to talk to the people that are watching us on Periscope to let them know what we're seeing as the storms move through. You know, the interesting part to this, Rick, is I think a lot of people in Louisville are kind of saying, well, what does this mean for Louisville? This could be a signal within this initial round of storms that we may actually somewhat break this initial line a little as it goes towards Louisville. And I would say the damaging wind threat as we stand, really when you go from a line, let's say from Driftwood, Salem, Borden into northeast Louisville, I think that's going to be the greater area for the damaging winds, because it looks like it's doing more self-sustaining there. And then on that back edge, that is kind of winding down. Now, here's the part of an issue with that. If that back edge just dies, what that will do is set down a boundary for the secondary storms that come through during the overnight tonight. Now, that secondary area of storms could then move along that line. That area has better winds to work with, meaning we could have a better potential during that second round tonight for severe weather. And also those lines tend to be areas where flash flooding can be a significant concern.
Right, you got to think of it almost like paving a road. Basically, that area that doesn't get hit with the storms will be untouched, and you will have all this instability, all this juice and energy for these storms to work with. And that's why if you do not get these storms with this initial first round, you should have to heighten your basically your awareness a little bit for the second round of storms that'll come in later on this evening, when you have a little more heat and instability to work with. You step outside, it's like you melt instantly. It is very warm, very humid, and that's where these storms like to feed off of, a lot of fuel for them, and that's why they're sort of sustaining, working their way down to the south and to the east at a rapid pace. Damaging winds right now continue to be one of the primary threats, but this tornado warning is the main focus, and Mark just turned on the lightning, and there is a tremendous amount of lightning with that. It's intense. I mean, it's probably a light show up there.
Yeah, lightning strikes are insane on this line here. Tornado warning for Jennings County until 1:45. We also have the severe thunderstorm warning for Jefferson, Scott, and Trimble counties, and also Washington County until 2 p.m. So we've got a number of areas with watches here, or for warnings rather, that are in effect. And the area that we're most concerned about is that tornado area. And what we're going to do here is I'm going to take this out a little bit and let Rick do a little bit of an assessment on what we're looking at on StormView 3D, which traditionally for us, StormView 3D is where we tend to be doing a lot of our analysis. So Rick, I'm going to take you tight south of Hayden, North Vernon. Let's look at velocities here first.
Okay. Yeah, and it does look like we're still watching within Jennings County. There's legitimate proof that we do have areas of rotation within our velocity scope. You look for those brighter colors, and where they pop and the greens and the reds come together, you see a little one right there, another one just to the east of Lovett. So we're watching these areas of rotation, which continue to journey down to the south and to the east. So areas like Lovett, if you're in Paris Crossing, you need to be in your safe place as this tornado warning continues. And Mark, if there's signals like this, I'm thinking this tornado warning is going to continue to be expanded further down to the south.
And look at those NROTs. When the NROTs here go towards green, and you can see that's occurring between Hayden and Lovett, and just to the northwest of Paris Crossing, that is a lot of times, Rick, when we actually get tornado hits. We get tornado touchdowns in these areas. So I'm really concerned right now in the Lovett area and Paris Crossing, with both of those areas moving, I mean, right at you, that you could catch a tornado. And Rick, we can also look at actually velocity within there and get an estimate. The winds within there on one side are somewhere in the neighborhood, I'm looking for peak, at around 50 knots. On the other side, not that, about 10 knots. So we're looking at about 80 miles an hour rotation on the area heading near Paris Crossing.
Okay.
Now the other area has some really high hits here of 60 knots. I've got another 64. So even if you do not get a tornado just west of Lovett, I mean, I think we're talking about legitimately 70, 75 mile an hour winds, and that rotation we're looking at is somewhere in the neighborhood of 90 miles an hour. So both of these areas are concerning for the potential for tornadoes. If you live in Lovett, if you live in Paris Crossing, it is indeed time to take your tornado safety precautions as we're watching those areas very, very closely. Potential for tornadoes. And the Weather Service, by the way, just did put out updated statement for that storm, and I want to check that out real quickly, see what they're saying. Their wording right now is at 1:27, severe thunderstorm capable of producing a tornado located 6 miles southwest of Vernon, and moving south at 40 miles an hour. So these storms are going south at around 40 miles an hour, which means Paris Crossing, they're moving in your direction. And we can put a track there on there, those storms. And, you know, Rick, when you track this thing, since there are kind of a multiple areas of rotation, in a sense, let's just track that whole part of that line south at about 40 miles per hour.
Gotcha. We'll take it down to the south and take it to the east, and it looks like areas including Hilltown, 11 minutes away, Deputy, 23 minutes, DuPont, 32, and then Wakefield in about 40 minutes. The potential for this tornado warning cell could be closer to your area. And Mark, I want to go a little outside this tornado warning box because we do have a lot. Yeah. Okay, the whole line. We have a lot of warnings and watches ongoing throughout parts of the area. We do have that severe thunderstorm watch, which will be in effect until 8 o'clock later on tonight. But just to get you up to date with some of the warnings we have ongoing across the area, we're going to start out with the one that is basically the oldest, and that one would be for Jackson, Jennings County, for winds around 70 miles an hour and also the potential for some smaller hail. So it includes areas like Owen, Seymour, North Vernon, and Lovett. On top of that and inside of there, you can't really see, so I'm going to turn off the lightning. We had that tornado warning for areas like North Vernon down through Lovett. And then extending down to the south a little bit, down 65, Scottsburg, Madison, Saluda, Deputy. We also have that severe thunderstorm warning, which does continue. So we're going to switch back over now to our other radar so you can see some of these warnings as we zoom out a little bit and give you some of the information with this one. The one that's further down to the south, Jefferson County, Indiana, Scott County, northern Washington, and northern Trimble County. This will remain in effect until 2 o'clock in the afternoon, so you want to stay away from windows. This is a severe thunderstorm warning, not a tornado warning for you, but I do want you to get away from the windows and just find a safe place. 60-mile-an-hour winds. That is going to be the main threat as those storms travel down to the south and to the east. So Scottsburg, Salem, Saluda, Madison, Deputy, get ready. These storms are moving in your direction.
You know, and since we do have what looks like solid rotation on this storm, our cut-in policy is we cut in if there's a threat to life and property. So I feel like we still have a significant threat of at least a quick spin-up occurring because that storm keeps showing rotation. So we're going to stay with this. The warning goes until 1:45. Remember, I'm going to be looking for your storm reports. I'm easy to find on Twitter. Mark with a C, Weinberg, WX. So Mark Weinberg, WX. Look for me on Twitter, and I want to hear your reports. First, just follow me when you get over there and let me know what you're seeing, if you can safely do that. Love it. It is not time to step outside right now, but if you're in your safe spot, you can let us know what you're seeing from your safe spot. And if you're away from the TV, remember, you can follow us. We're going to be cutting in. We have it live on WDRB.com, the streaming, and also on Periscope. If you're familiar with the app, I use Periscope when I do severe weather cut-ins, which means basically you can watch me that way as well. So you'll have multiple opportunities and ways where you can continue to watch us. The main threat right now for Seymour, for Crothersville, for Gibson, for Jennings, Scottsburg, I think is going to be damaging winds. We are more concerned right just to the west of Lovett that there could be a tornado occurring right now, and it's heading exactly towards Paris Crossing. So if you live in Paris Crossing, I need you to get in your safe spot immediately, which means I want you downstairs. I want you underneath something. I want you to be in the center part of your house, and I want you to keep away from windows. Rick, I'm going to go back over to Stormview 3D as you've been watching. If you could, do me a favor, take me back over to one-screen mode. Okay. And what I'm going to do is, as we go to one-screen mode, I'm going to go through that a little bit and give you analysis of what we're looking at. And again, as I mentioned, we're trying to give our cut-ins also in multiple different kinds of platforms. So you'll be able to see me also on Twitter and on Periscope as we do our cut-ins here. So the area that we're watching, this is the actual squall line. Now what happens within these squall lines is sometimes you will get kinks within the line. This is not your traditional kind of tornado where you will see an individual supercell. This is the kind of tornado that occurs within a line, and they can be very, very difficult to see because they can be shrouded in rain. And you can see as that storm moved off to the south. Let's take this zoom in out just a little bit, Rick, and what you'll notice is looking along that line, smooth as we go south of Seymour, smooth near Austin, smooth near Brownsville, and then whoops, you start to get a kink here. Now, why is that kink occurring? Well, it's occurring because the segment to the west is bowing southward faster, damaging to destructive winds from Seymour, Austin to Scottsburg. And as that line bows to the south and moves faster, it creates rotation. And you can see from Lovett through Paris Crossing, we've got where these pinks and these greens come together. Now remember, when green and pink and red come together, it's showing rotation within the thunderstorm. So as we zoom in here, we can see that area of rotation. And let's go over as we zoom in, Rick, to NROT. As we can see, NROT is basically normalized rotation, but it gives us a good, easy way to see where that rotation's occurring. So you can see here, just north of Paris Crossing, just to the west of Lovett. We're talking 2 miles to the west of Lovett. We're talking 2.5 miles north of Paris Crossing. This is where we have our tornado warning. And this is where, if a tornado is occurring, it would be. I think it's got a legitimate chance of producing a small tornado in this area. Lovett, Paris Crossing, I want you to take your tornado safety precautions immediately. Rick, what road are we looking at here from Lovett through Paris Crossing? I want to make sure that I'm getting roads correct here.
This is South 3.
Okay.
And there's not too many other in the area, so basically that is the only one at the moment. I'm also going to turn on CC Mark and see if we have anything showing up.
Okay, and what Rick's showing here, let me explain real quickly. The CC is what it's looking for within this thunderstorm. Is there any debris lofting? Rick, take me over to NROT, and I'm going to, so we can show the viewers what we're basically doing. Here is the area rotation. I'm going to put my finger right there, and now Rick is going to switch over to that CC. And if we see any really red areas within here, not the pink, that would mean there was a tornado lofting debris. And as we look, we are not seeing anything lofting debris in this area right now. Normally, it really carves out a hole. So that's one positive that we're seeing, but this still is a strong area rotation. What kind of velocity are we looking at on these pinks here right there, Rick? Looks like getting higher.
Yeah, honestly, it seems to be picking up a little bit. It looks like those two areas of rotation congealed a bit,
okay,
and now they're starting to work together.
Rick, what are those right there, that pink right
60,
there?
we have 60, 65, 67
okay.
on one side.
And give me the other gate, the gate-to-gate right here.
And the gate-to-gate shear, we're also looking at probably about
10,
20.
12. Okay, so we're talking about somewhere in the neighborhood of 90 knots of rotation right now. 90 knots of rotation basically means about 100-mile-an-hour rotation within this storm. We're not talking about something that is, let's say a higher end type of tornado, but we're talking about the kind, the EF1, EF2 kind of tornadoes that absolutely can occur out of this. Rick, take me back over to the NROT if you could, please, just for a second. I'm curious, rotation, it does look like there were two areas of rotation. So this first right now is crossing just north of Paris Crossing by around 1 mile, and the second one's going to cross Paris Crossing by about a half a mile. Basically what we're saying is if you live in Paris Crossing, you need to take your tornado safety precautions immediately. I would get downstairs, I would get underneath something. You want to go to the center part of your house, and you've got to keep away from windows in Paris Crossing. Potential tornado moving towards your area right now. And it'll be interesting. The Weather Service has another 8 minutes. Rick, I'm going to let you do a quick assessment on that line, track the whole line, and I'm going to go and see what the Weather Service plan is as we go towards 145.
Okay, so we're going to go back over to the other radar from our high-definition radar, which you're seeing right now, back over to the main look. And this is a wider perspective showing the storms moving through southern Indiana, and they're blowing through with quite a punch here, winds between 60 and 70 miles an hour, and we're also watching that tornado warning. Mark, you got something?
Seymour, along Highway 50, we're getting reports right now that utility poles are down near the Steak and Shake on Highway 50 in Seymour. So we got reports now of damage in Seymour along Highway 50, power line, utilities down. We'll have to have the newsroom. If we could have the newsroom check out Jackson County. Richard, if you could ask the newsroom to check them out so we can find out if we're getting any reports from the utility companies of power outages here. Rick, I didn't mean to interrupt you on that storm track here, so let me give you that back.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to track this one. And honestly, this tornado warning, it only goes until, let's see the latest here, until 1:45. So another 5-7 minutes or so, and this warning will expire. And I honestly think they're going to extend this warning further down to the south and to the east, because the area of rotation we're watching, which is just to the north of Paris Crossing, is almost going to be out of that warning box. So areas down to the south and to the west, I want to give you a heads up, because even though you're not under a tornado warning, it is almost likely you're going to see one pretty soon. So areas like Deputy, Wakefield, Smyrna, you're not under a tornado warning right now, but chances are pretty high that you're going to see one in the next couple of minutes or so. So now is the time, instead of waiting, now is the time to head to your safe place, possibly weak tornado.
I like the way you're thinking with that. 1:45 is when the warning will expire, but as Rick mentioned, I'm in total agreement here. If you live just one county basically south, I think that we could potentially go into a tornado warning here, which would be areas like Deputy, like Republican. Basically, we're talking about Jefferson County, Indiana, and then would be the maybe far northeastern and northern part of Scott County. So those are counties that we're kind of looking down the line. If the radar signatures continue to look the same, we could potentially see a tornado warning that gets issued for the rest of the line.
Right.
As it is, we know at least we have damaging winds that have moved through the Seymour area right now. So we know that potentially damaging to destructive winds moving towards Scottsburg. And Rick, take that a little bit wider here. What I want to do quickly is the in motion kind of thing, because for Louisville, I think a lot of people are wondering, is this initial line going to get me? You know, I'm going to go over to the wall here as I do that, Rick, real quickly.
Okay.
And part of the reason why I want to do that is because I want to show what is that one little storm that is kind of sitting there behind the line. What we're going to do here, and I'm going to try to set, we're also doing updates, by the way, on Periscope as well. If that's kind of another way that you have the ability to watch, you'll be able to see us that way. So here comes this line that's racing off to the south. What we have had is this individual cell that's on the flanking edge, on the back edge. Now, let me kind of tell you what I think is going to happen and how I think this goes. I think this line is going to bring damaging to destructive winds from Seymour, North Vernon, Madison, through, let's say, Carrollton, Vevey, through even around the LaGrange area. I think it's going to get onto the northeast side of Louisville, and I'm concerned that this is going to lay down somewhat of a boundary. Now, this boundary becomes really important because if we get a boundary that forms, that would, in a sense, be a focusing mechanism for the second area of storms that would move across the area. So that's where we have to watch here. If this lays down a boundary right here through Louisville, that would open the door for potentially the second round tonight. Now, I got to tell you, the wind energy is aloft decent today. The wind energy tonight is quite a bit stronger. So if we get an area of the atmosphere, Rick, that's untouched by this initial round of thunderstorms, that really kind of concerns me on how things would unfold then for tonight with potentially that second line coming through. Even if we're just talking about the damaging wind potential, that's enough, but I also think that would really set up a zone for flooding concerns.
Absolutely. We saw exactly what happened early on Sunday morning. We had training thunderstorms across the area, multiple rounds, and we saw that flooding. The ground is already saturated. It cannot hold any more rain. So just about one storm to come through can drop 1 to 2 inches of rain per hour. Watching that very carefully. We've switched back over now to our other radar, our high-definition radar. And just a heads up now, if you live in Jackson County, we have 1,800 people now, Mark, reported without power. So we do have damage there, as you mentioned from the National Weather Service report, and we also have multiple power outages.
And you know what? That area of rotation is coming out of that tornado warning right now, so we're going to have to see what Indy's going to do because they're going to have to make some decisions here pretty soon. And the warnings here go very, very close to the river right now. For what it's worth, Rick, they just extended those severe thunderstorm warnings further down towards the Ohio River. Okay. So the National Weather Service, their latest statement here is severe thunderstorm warning. This is where things get concerning. Severe thunderstorm warning for Henry, Oldham, Trimble, Floyd, Clark, Jefferson, Scott, and Washington County. So for most of these are Indiana, but it crosses the line in Oldham and Trimble County, and you can see what we're talking about here is winds to 70 miles per hour. Let me be 100% clear about what 70-mile-an-hour winds mean. 70-mile-an-hour winds are destructive winds. Hurricane force winds are 75. 70-mile-an-hour winds will take down power lines and trees and cause extensive damage. On top of that, we have just seen, 7 inches of rain in Louisville, Rick, in the last 10 days. So the ground is really soft right now. I mean, I think a 50-mile-an-hour wind could probably do some damage on trees, but I think 70 could cause extensive tree damage.
Absolutely. Once you get above 74, that's considered hurricane force winds, and that's something you do not mess around and you do not want to be outside near the windows. Mark, looking back at that tornado warning, it's still in effect right now, and as you mentioned, the actual area of rotation we're watching has just left the actual warning. So if you live in northern, let's say northwestern Jefferson County or northern Scott County, from Deputy through Hilltown, Smyrna, you want to be in your safe place even though you are not under that tornado warning. And Mark, the good news is that the rotation has come down just a little bit, but still watching a strong area of rotation just to the south of Paris Crossing, tracking its way down to the south and to the east. So I'm going to give you a couple more locations. Once that tornado warning comes out, if a new one does come out, we're going to let you know immediately. But for the meantime, we have to continue to watch that one warning, which continues through areas like Wakefield in 10 minutes. It will be in Smyrna in 15 minutes, Republican 35 minutes away. And if this one holds together, 39 minutes or so in the Madison area. And these storms cycle a little bit. Right. They won't hold together in terms of the rotation, but by far, even if you don't have a tornado warning, you're going to think something's going on because outside the winds are going to be fierce, gusting between 60 and 70 miles an hour. And with any thunderstorm, aside from the wind and hail potential, which makes them severe, you have heavy rain and lightning. And even though severe thunderstorms don't talk about lightning, they don't talk about heavy rain, those are serious things because you can have lightning, which can cause fires. You can also get some of that heavy rain to lead to more flash flooding, and flooding is the #1 killer. So you do not want to ever wander out when you have the potential for flash flooding, and all of Kentuckiana right now is under a flash flood watch.
And I've asked the National Weather Service if they're going to continue the tornado warning, which will expire in about minute now here. So the tornado warning now is officially expired. What I'm going to do is stay with this for a minute or two more, because what they're warning that they're using is what they refer to as a severe thunderstorm warning with a tornado possible. Severe thunderstorm warning with tornado possible is used at times when there's not a confirmed tornado. It's used at times when you're talking about a line of thunderstorms. Really, I think my concern here is going to be specifically from Driftwood, Salem, Borden, through just on the northeast side of Louisville on this line. And I would say my greatest concern for the more damaging to destructive winds would include Scottsburg. And part of that is, Rick, because we have a bow. And if you look at where that bow is the most pronounced, you can see near Scottsburg, that's where we've got that area that's the most pronounced. And what I mean by that is, Rick, if you could zoom in into that area, I'm going to show you along the radar right now. What that is really showing is the winds aloft are much stronger in that area. This is kind of something that's important. Think about what's happening here. Is the winds aloft are pushing down towards the ground, and what they're doing is forcing that storm outward, pushing it outward. That is what's creating the bow. So the damaging wind potential in North Vernon and Johnson wouldn't be as high, but this area that it's surging out ahead are going to be very strong. And I need you to be prepared right now in Scottsburg. The potential for wind gusts to 70 miles per hour possible. Not seeing anything in there that concerns me about rotation. Am seeing some ticks in there that look like they were close to 65, 60 knots, which would be somewhere in the neighborhood of 70 miles an hour. And then, Rick, if you could scope out near Deputy, I'm just kind of curious if we're also looking at that rotation or whether that has come down at all either. A little bit of rotation here just north of Lexington, Indiana, near Deputy. Doesn't look as good as it once did. This is what we call a scope. It allows us to look through the thunderstorms and see behind the thunderstorms from a rotation standpoint and get a sense of what's going on here. But the most damaging winds, let's say Scottsburg, Henryville, New Washington, Saluda. I need you to be prepared for winds that could gust to 70 miles per hour. Rick is putting a storm track on here for you. Vienna, 2 minutes from now. Madison, 11 minutes from now. Carrollton, 25 minutes from now. And Charlestown, 43 minutes from now. I think as things stand right now, Louisville could miss the worst of the strong winds, and I think that in this initial line, those could go just to the northeast of Louisville. Rick, if we're not going to get another tornado warning out of this, what I'm going to do probably is go back to programming here for a little while. We'll watch the storms, and then we'll reassess here just in a minute. Weather Service has not said at this point that they're going to continue any tornado warning here. So we're talking about the potential for damaging winds, Scottsburg, Henryville, Madison, Bedford, through, let's say, Charlestown, LaGrange. We're going to continue to watch those storms very closely. Winds to 60 miles an hour remain possible. And you know what? We're actually seeing rotation coming up again, so I'm not going to go back to programming here just yet. That concerns me. Rick, I'm going to go over to the source you're looking at so you can kind of show people what you're talking about on those two different sources. Just east of Scottsburg, it really starting to look like we have the potential for another spin-up occurring. That would be just east of Blocher. That rotation has come up quite a bit and now into the yellow on the normalized rotation.
Right, Mark. I mean, absolutely. This is actually showing a little stronger rotation than the previous storm, which was up in Jefferson County. So they're actually up in Jennings County. So now in Jefferson County, you are not under a tornado warning, but you need to be in your safe place. If you live in Jefferson County areas, let's see, we're going to try to look at some of the roads here. So basically, West Main Street, just along there, we are seeing that strong area of rotation. It extends along 256. If you have any friends, family along 256, you want to go ahead, give them a heads up if they live in Jefferson County to watch out for a very powerful storm moving in their direction.
I just spoke with the Weather Service. They said right now they're not going to issue a tornado warning. They said there's still rotation, but they're not seeing a need for a tornado warning. Since we have some concern about that area rotation that's come up, I think what we're going to do is stay with this for maybe another scan to make sure that comes back down, and if it does, then we'll release. But I don't want to release, then the National Weather Service issue a tornado warning, and then we kind of come right back in. There's no real point in doing that. I think for all of us, that would just be more of a confusion type of thing. So just to reevaluate here, what we're talking about as the greatest threat right now is going to be damaging winds. Damaging winds by far would be the greatest threat along the line, and then the potential for isolated tornadoes, Rick, along the line.
Right. We're actually going to give you a little wider perspective here and show you the storms as they continue to track down to the south and to the east. And these storms are packing a serious punch. They mean business with heavy rain, lots of lightning, gusty winds and hail possible. The potential is there for tornado. We just had that tornado warning in Jennings County. It has expired, but if you live in Jefferson County right now, we are watching a little area of rotation. You can see the sort of spin that occurs here, these little kinks in the main line, but there is some damaging winds with this one. Areas like Scottsburg, you know exactly what I'm talking about, and look at that. That is the lightning on there, a tremendous amount of lightning, so much that you can barely see through to see what you're looking at there. But areas like Lovett, Deputy, it's a light show up for you just to the north of Austin along 65. If you were traveling 65 northbound, looking up at these storms, you can see them coming, those darker clouds gathering up, and lightning here or there, which continues to be an issue as we go from Deputy down through Scottsburg. The main line of storms will basically come through with a lot of heavy rain, a little gust front, some gusty winds out ahead of it. Then you get the rain, then you get those really, really strong winds, the ones that could be between 60, 70, perhaps even as close to 80 miles an hour. Mark is tracking this down to the south. Areas like Salem, get ready. It's going to be in your area in the next 5 minutes. Borden, it's 22 minutes away from you. Charlestown, 23 minutes. And then areas like Silver Creek and Jeffersonville in the next 30 to 40 minutes. So if you live in Louisville, Mark, a lot of people asking, what's going to happen to me?
Right, and I want to show you quickly what the storms look like from a 3D perspective so you can get a sense here. The storms, these are in a scenario where we have extraordinary amounts of fuel for the thunderstorms. So you can see if you look closely there, the storms are going through around 45 to about 50,000 feet up into the atmosphere. So these are big boy storms. 50,000 feet is somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 miles above the ground. So these are huge storms that are extending upward. And then as these storms continue to move in our direction, the question obviously becomes, as Rick said, is, you know, how are these going to impact Louisville? And what I can tell you here is, I would say from a Louisville perspective, my concern is greater for northeast Louisville. I would say that the line itself, and this is showing up in a lot of that high-res data, Rick, that Louisville is probably going to be on the edge of where this comes through, and then east and northeast of Louisville would have the greatest threat for the 60 and 70, and this is round one. Right. I mean, this is the first of many rounds that are going to move across the area. If things hold as they are right now, northeast Louisville would get the storms, and the western side and southern side of Louisville would, in a sense, generally miss. These are going to be absolute lightning machines here as they continue to move off to the south. We continue to see some rotation off to the east of Scottsburg. Weather Service right now is not saying anything on that tornado warning. And I'll tell you what, since we don't have a tornado warning right now, since we're in a scenario here where we're going to get a little opportunity to reassess here, I'm going to do one last quick track on the line of storms as they race to the southeast, puts it in Madison 2 minutes from now, Carrollton 14 minutes from now, Silver Creek 24 minutes from now, and 37 minutes from now it'll be in the Linden area. Jen, where did you say we have the live shot from, live picture? Let's go ahead and take that. So Austin, Indiana, we have a live shot out there. And let me show you, I'll show you on radar. Jen, do you know if we can do a split screen on that with radar so I can put Austin on the map here as well? Okay, so we're going to try to put a split screen so you can get a sense of where we're talking about, where those storms are. You've got Crothersville, Scottsburg, Henryville, and this looks like just rain right now to the Austin, Indiana area. I'm not seeing anything in there that would be overly concerning, but winds to 60 to 70 miles an hour will be moving through Scottsburg and Henryville next. Henryville, Lexington, New Washington. You know, our hearts will never, ever forget areas like Borden, like Henryville, you know, off to the east. We'll never forget everything that happened. And I know anytime there's a thunderstorm after 2012, I know a lot of you get real nervous about them. So what I want you to know in Henryville is expect in about 12 minutes a gust to 60 or 70 mile an hour winds. I see no signal right now of a tornado in your area or potentially hitting Henryville. It looks more like damaging winds would be possible. For Borden, I think you're talking more about the potential for winds to 60, but that 70 would be like Henryville, New Washington, Charlestown, Chelsea. We'll continue to watch those areas. As we stand right now, there are no tornado warnings in effect. The lines look like they're posing more particularly a damaging wind threat. I want to reassess here, speak to the Weather Service. If we do get another tornado warning, we'll obviously come right back in. But severe thunderstorm warnings remain in effect for a chunk of our area, specifically Jackson, Washington, Floyd, Clark, Scott, Jennings, Jefferson, Carroll, Trimble, Henry, and Oldham County remain under severe thunderstorm warnings. We have no tornado warnings in effect right now. We're going to continue to watch the storms, and if we do get another tornado warning, I think we'll break back into programming. So we're going to take a short break. Either way, we'll probably give you a quick update before 2 o'clock. Keep it right here on WDRB for continuing weather updates.
Just as you know, lots of lightning, heavy rain that does not make a severe thunderstorm. In order for it to be severe, it has to have hail an inch in diameter or some winds over 58 miles an hour. We do have winds being reported from Mesonet, which are well above that criteria. So watching out for some powerful winds moving across the area. We're going to put a tracker on the severe thunderstorm as it dives down to the south and to the east. It continues until 3 o'clock for Henry, Jefferson, Oldham and Shelby County. And I'm going to put a tracker on this one as it does continue its motion across 265 and eventually along 64. So if you are traveling or planned on traveling, good idea to wait it out as we basically give you some of the locations. Jeffersonville, 6 minutes. Louisville in about 15 minutes or so. That's the time frame when this storm will be arriving. 27 minutes in Jeffersontown, 37 in Newburgh, 38 in Hillview. Along with the heavy rain and lightning, a lot of wind possible. In fact, we've had so much rain in the past couple days, Mark, that it's not going to take 60-mile-an-hour winds to knock down some trees and cause some power outages. Perhaps maybe 40, 50 miles an hour, and you could be dealing with some power outages.
Agreed, and that kind of does concern me here, the ground being so saturated here. The wind gusts that we've gotten so far out of Oldham County have been 50 miles an hour. It doesn't mean that the winds haven't gone over that. That's just at the exact site here. But when you look at the bow echo here, it basically looks, if you're kind of thinking about this, you know, you remember what it was like when you had a bow and arrow when you were a kid. Well, this kind of looks like that bow. Now, where the winds would be the strongest is right at what we refer to, Rick was talking about, at the apex of that bow. So the strongest winds right now will be moving right into Crestwood, basically just northeast of the Crestwood exit, going through the Buckner exit to LaGrange exit. Expect wind gusts to 60 or even 70 miles per hour along 71 right now in Oldham County. Right along 71 in Oldham County, there are extremely strong winds along this line moving into your area. For Louisville, what does this mean? I think, Rick, we're probably talking more in the 50 to 60 mile an hour range for central Louisville, including 65. I think we probably could get closer to 60, maybe a touch higher as we go into the northeastern part of the county. But that bow looks like it's really zeroed in on Oldham County, which, if that holds together, would then go towards Shelby County.
Absolutely. And areas in West Louisville right now might be saying, well, what's going to happen? I don't think this necessarily will hit you. It might actually just miss you off to the north and to the east. So areas of eastern Jefferson County, just on the edge of Louisville Metro, under the gun for this severe thunderstorm, even though you're under the warning. If you look at the actual motion of this storm, it really isn't all of that basically due south. It's kind of due south and east. So areas like Silver Creek, Prospect, getting hit with some of that rain right now. We're going to go back over to one of our tower cams that shows this
look
shelf
at that
cloud.
shelf.
And that is pronounced.
Yeah, that's going to scare people, and that's part of the reason that we came back in here when we wanted to cut again, is because you're going to see what's referred to as a shelf cloud approaching the metro. This is that shelf cloud, and you just saw a lightning strike here. Let me explain what we're talking about here. So a thunderstorm itself will ingest wind, ingest rain, ingest air, and that air then rises up in the thunderstorm. Okay, so that's the beginning of the whole thunderstorm. But a thunderstorm, like a human being, breathes in and breathes out. And when a thunderstorm breathes out, it pushes cold air out ahead of it. In this case, what we're seeing is a very pronounced shelf cloud that is moving across Louisville right now. This is going to be basically, if you're looking north out of Louisville, and this shelf cloud will be the leading edge of the wind gust to 50, 55, or 60 miles an hour for Louisville. And Rick, you know, it's not that often that we get to see these things live occurring on tower cam, but you know, that thing, I'm sure anybody looking north out of Louisville is probably not feeling comfortable seeing that.
I know a lot of people are actually concerned. They're a little freaked out with the situation, but right now the main threat is for the winds, and you can see the actual bow. We call it a bow echo, but basically, not a bow echo, a little bow segment coming through, but you can sort of see that along 71. So if you have anyone traveling 71, give them a heads up. Areas like LaGrange, Dempseytown, getting closer now to Crestwood, you are seeing that lowering of the clouds. The heavy rain will be picking up, and you can see those gusty winds, which are going to be blowing through around 60 to 70 miles an hour. We're going to put a tracker on this one for you as it dives down to the south and to the east, some of those locations where you can actually see the storms coming in. Indian Hills, 10 minutes away. St. Matthews, 18 minutes. And Jeffersontown, 34 minutes. Hopewell, about 30, maybe 40 minutes from you. If this storm continues on its path and journey, it should be in your area pretty soon.
And what we, you know, in Louisville, part of the reason we decided to do this cut is because we kind of feel that people in Louisville are probably going to start to get freaked out with that shelf cloud moving into the city here. Basically, it is moving right into the city. If you're in Prospect right now, you're going to see that shelf cloud. If you're in Silver Creek, if you're just northeast of Louisville, you're going to be seeing it as well. This is basically wind gusts to 55 or 60 miles an hour. I think the greatest area of concern here from a perspective of the damaging winds, no question, is going to be Oldham County, Rick.
Right.
We've got that bow, that area where the winds are definitely going to be a little bit stronger. You can kind of see here as we look on the side of the screen there. Notice right near LaGrange, we have what basically looks like a bow and arrow. And that's where those winds are going a little bit stronger up towards the 60-mile-an-hour range. I think the wind potential is highest right along 71 right now from Crestwood through LaGrange. The good news is Rick is doing what we refer to as scoping that storm, looking for rotation. Rick, my assessment of that would be straight line winds. I'm not seeing anything overly concerning right now.
Right. It's more of a unidirectional sort of threat at this point in time. Nothing that infers any sort of rotation or tornadic activity, which is good news, but these winds are still going to mean business. Perhaps hurricane force winds possible with these storms with gusts over 70 miles an hour. So watch out. Take this seriously. Stay inside and do so until at least 3 o'clock. That's when this warning expires. But you're getting that heavy rain along 71. And right between LaGrange and Crestwood is sort of the apex or the center of where that storm goes. The winds accelerate out from there, and that's when you get those strong winds, the heavy rain, and the lightning from this severe thunderstorm. And you can see as we give you a wider perspective here that areas that got hit with those storms earlier, Jackson, Jennings County, quiet for now. But you don't want to let your guard down, Mark. This is round one of multiple rounds of storms that are going to be moving through the area. We have another one later on this evening, potentially another one tonight. And each and every one, once you get one through, it sort of impacts the way the next one comes in. But right now in Louisville Metro, we're doing a cut-in for that shelf cloud for this severe thunderstorm warning and watching this one very carefully.
Yeah, that shelf cloud's moving right into the city here. What you're noticing as you look at this is basically what looks like an arcing cloud that's coming across the city. This arcing cloud is what's referred to as a shelf cloud. Now, these shelf clouds are a weather indicator that strong gusty winds are going to be moving into the city. Not all the time that you get to actually see something like that live on camera here, but this will be the nose of the gusty winds. From a perspective of Louisville and damaging winds, Rick, I think northeastern side of the city has the greatest threat of seeing those damaging winds. Really, as we look at LaGrange specifically, that's my location, you know, of the strongest winds that we would see along the line. I don't think we're in a scenario of destructive winds right now. I think we're more in the type of scenario of damaging winds right now. And I think what I mean by that is the destructive winds are when winds basically go over around 75 miles an hour. Those are really when you're talking about taking down tons and tons of trees. But at the same time, what I want you to remember is we've seen virtually 7 inches of rain in a huge part of our area in just the last 10 days or so. What that does is it makes the ground pretty soft. And this poses a problem because maybe a stronger tree with non-saturated ground would, let's say, hold up to 70-mile-an-hour winds. These weaker trees that have now grounds that are saturated can come uprooted at weaker winds. So I think this makes this scenario somewhat different. Rick, you know what? That bow actually may be re-evolving here more towards Prospect. You know, looking at that radar, it does appear that we have a segment now that's starting to accelerate southward just over northeast Louisville. So Prospect, I think Goshen, I think Anchorage. If I was in Worthington right now along Hurstbourne and let's say 22, my concern here is those winds could be coming up a little. Rick, what do you think about that? Looks like we're definitely starting to see that Boeing segment maybe re-evolving towards northeast Louisville.
Absolutely. Eastern Jefferson County right now also seeing some of those gusty winds. So Prospect right now getting hit with the beginning of that rainfall, and it will last about a half hour. With inside this storm, aside from the fact that we have some powerful winds, Mark, we're also putting on the hail scope there for you.
And we've got some hail potentially. You know, the good news is it's not that large, but near Borden we could be looking at some small hail. Hail to the size of 1 inch moving through Crestwood, Charlestown. That'll eventually make it towards the Prospect area. And Rick goes down the line. What you notice here is not super impressive hail. That's actually a good thing. I think the hail potential could be a little bit greater tonight, partly because I think our wind energy actually looks a little better. Rick, let's do a storm track here on that storm as it comes across the metro right now. So basically we're talking about areas like Prospect, downtown Louisville, J-Town, Eminence, through Simpsonville, Shelbyville, and then into Waddy-Peytona. So in Jeffersonville, it's obviously on top of you right now. You'll see that shelf cloud, that lowering base of the cloud. That doesn't necessarily mean tornado or anything like that. It traditionally means the nose of gusty winds. Louisville in 8 minutes, so downtown Louisville 8 minutes, and 19 minutes in J-Town, Newburgh 25 minutes, so in Frankfort 31 minutes from now, and then Harrisonville in 41 minutes from now. Rick, how's that thing looking on the shelf cloud right now from our tower cam?
It's definitely still there. It looks pretty ominous, pretty dark and scary in downtown Louisville, almost like Gotham City out there. But basically, the main threat right now is for the winds. Any thunderstorm you get is going to have the heavy rain and the lightning, but the wind damage threat right now is the one thing we're watching very carefully. So this is the basic look that we have from our tower cam looking over the Ohio River into southern Indiana from downtown Louisville. And you can see those clouds, which are just gathering overhead, blowing on through. And pretty soon the rain's going to start here, Mark. We don't really see any just yet. falling in downtown Louisville, but it's about to come down in buckets.
And I'm trying to check what the latest here from the Kentucky Mesonet on the wind speeds, the max wind speeds that we've seen so far is 50 miles an hour out of Oldham County, so that's a good thing here. But that bow may be re-evolving here a little bit towards downtown Louisville. And you just saw a lightning strike there. So Prospect, LaGrange, you know, Rick, one thing that, you know, also concerns me, and by the way, we've got Jeremy Capel here as well. Jeremy's working on the forecast. We've got basically the whole team kind of dealing with some of these things. We're trying to get Jude a little bit of sleep here because I suspect I will be seeing Mr. Redfield very late tonight here with those storms. From a flooding perspective, Rick, you know, we're starting to see an issue here that may be developing, especially for the northeastern side of Louisville. That storm that extends through Salem and Borden and Charlestown is going to go over that exact same path. That means northeast Louisville on saturated grounds. We could have a real flood risk developing.
Absolutely. These are the same locations that had to deal with that flooding early on Sunday morning, and unfortunately, storms going directly overhead, the same locations that got hit earlier. So eastern Jefferson County, up in Clark County, parts of Oldham County, Henry County, Trimble County, be on guard for strong to severe storms rolling on through with gusty winds and a tremendous amount of rainfall. Rainfall rates potentially between 3 to 4 inches per hour. And we all know what happened with that. You see the street flooding. So if you had any travel plans, you were thinking about going out in the next 20 to 30 minutes, if you live inside these orange boxes, you're going to have to wait it out. So areas like Prospect along 71, moving into LaGrange, Crestwood, Todd's Point, getting a lot of heavy rain developing, and along with the heavy rain, we're seeing these little bows which come onto radar, and that tells us the winds are moving ferociously between 50 and 60 miles an hour. So you can see in Louisville Metro still dry, just over the river, that heavy rain beginning to come down. New Albany getting some light drizzle. Silver Creek, it is pouring for you along 65. Charlestown, Goshen, you are in this thunderstorm with the heavy rain, the gusty winds, and the lightning, and eventually areas down to the south along 64 will start to get it from Shelbyville through Anchorage into Jeffersontown. It's dry right now. You look outside and you see these very, very dark clouds gathering. You probably get a gust of wind, and then the rain will begin. Thousands of lightning strikes showing up in the last half hour. And that's another thing. A lot of people underestimate the power of lightning. It can be dangerous. You can get struck by lightning. You can start fires. So just make sure you're in a safe place away from the windows. All of these storms diving down to the south rapidly at a pace around 30 to 40 miles an hour. And that's why areas of eastern Jefferson County, Oldham County, all of the areas that experience flooding now have to watch out for potentially some more. We do have a flash flood warning, which includes Oldham County, it includes eastern Jefferson County, and that's until 5 o'clock later on this afternoon. We also have that severe thunderstorm watch until 8 o'clock later on this evening.
So here's what Rick just mentioned here, severe thunderstorm watch. We have removed parts of our area from that watch. That would include Lawrence, Jackson, Jennings County out of the severe thunderstorm watch. We've got flash flooding concerns here for Clark, Oldham, eastern Jefferson, and Shelby County here. And what I quickly want to show you is what we refer to as the HRRR computer model. So basically this is one of the computer models that we look at, and you can see it shows our initial line here and kind of bothering us through around 5 o'clock here. Now I'll take you forward and you can see we lull a little bit in the evening. I don't necessarily think that this could potentially be the show. By 9 o'clock, you can see a wave of thunderstorms that's developing near Indianapolis, and watch that line turn into this major area of severe weather potentially tonight getting towards Louisville around 2 a.m. And that's one of the things that we have been concerned about, is that this is basically just round number one. You could see some of those strong storms here, this being 2:30, moving again towards Louisville. And I think really whatever we get out of the scenario right now partially will prime the pump for us to get more severe weather here tonight, number one, and then pose a legitimate flash flooding threat as we go towards the overnight hours. So these are a couple of things that we need to watch here. For Louisville, I'm going to take it back over to that tower cam shot real quick so we can take a look outside. Rain has now made it to the downtown area. Shelf cloud has moved over downtown Louisville, so that shelf now is along 64 heading towards J-Town PRP. You'll see that lowering in the clouds. That is going to be what we refer to as a shelf cloud and the leading edge of the 55 to 60 mile an hour wind gusts. Rick, you know, we haven't got a ton of reports of 60 mile an hour winds, and normally I would say in a lot of these kind of situations, you know what, this is not really a severe thunderstorm, but I think with the ground being as wet, I think this poses a little bit of a different threat, because I don't think it's going to take much to bring power lines down.
There are already 8 1,500 people as last check up in Jennings County that had power outages, which means it's heading into areas that also saw the same amount of rain as they did. The ground is saturated. The roots don't have as much ground to grip onto, and that's why you can see a wind gust around 40 to 50 miles an hour taking down tree limbs and causing additional power outages. That's something you want to take seriously. So hopefully you're prepared for these storms as they dive down to the south and to the east. I want to give you a quick wider perspective. Notice areas down in southern Kentucky not seeing anything at all. The highest concentration of the storms just to the east and to the north to the east of Louisville Metro, extending from Salem down through Borden, Henryville. You're about to be done with these storms for a while. It's only temporary. That's the thing. This is just round one. You have to be on guard through the rest of the evening and overnight tonight because another round of storms, as Mark was just showing you on future radar, will eventually come in. But Charlestown, Prospect, Anchorage, LaGrange, in the meantime, watch out for some heavy rain.
Storm too, the one just northwest of Louisville, so that could mean an extended period where we could be under a severe chance here in Louisville if that second one follows down that line. And then the second concern is going to be flash flooding. I mean, this is a legitimate potential for another inch or inch and a half of rain, and we do not need that again.
And Mark, that was the location we were actually watching some of that hail. So that new severe thunderstorm is for 60-mile-an-hour winds and also the potential for some quarter-size hail, which can cause damage to cars and roofs. We're going to actually put the hail scope on here to sort of pinpoint some of the locations. If you live between South Boston and Borden, potentially some hail moving on through down to the south and to the east. So watch out if you live in parts of Clark County because you could see this storm with a hail core coming on through. But hail is not the main threat right now. It's sort of a secondary threat. Right now, the winds by far pose the biggest threat with some of those gusts between 50 and 60 miles an hour. We continue to watch all of these severe storms rolling down to the south and to the east. A lot of heavy rain occurring. The potential for flash flooding. You do not want to be traveling in this sort of stuff. And along 71, that is not a place you want to be right now, all the way from Crestwood through LaGrange into Campbellsburg as we look through Henry County, Newcastle, Eminence, getting hit with some heavy rain. I'm going to put a tracker on this one for you just so you get an idea as to when it's going to be in your area. So as it slides south and east, around 30, 40 miles an hour, Newburgh 11 minutes away, Frankfort 15 minutes, Mount Washington 28 minutes, and then Lawrenceburg, if this storm holds together, which it's gonna, between 30 and 35 minutes, it's going to blow on through with a lot of rain, some heavy lightning, in fact, and even some winds, which could be pretty gusty as well.
And we're getting a lot of pictures here of that shelf cloud moving across the area. One of the things I want you to know is that when we do our severe weather coverage, we do what we refer to as a multi-platform approach. And what that means is you can watch us on TV. So if you're in front of your TV now watching me doing this cut-in, one of the other things that you could actually watch me do is through my phone, I'm actually broadcasting on Periscope. Periscope is easy to find. If you find me on Twitter, it's Mark Weinberg WX. And then what I can do is I can speak to you through my phone. And basically, it's kind of, in a sense, a behind-the-scenes ability for you to see what's going on here. Also, we'll have updates on our social media platforms, which would include Twitter and on Facebook. I'm easy to find on either of those. Mark Weinberg, it's Mark with a C. On Twitter, it's Mark Weinberg, Mark with a C, WX. Head over there. Click like or follow, and you can stay in touch with us. So even if we're not on the air, you'll be able to kind of talk to us and find out what's going on in your area. Now, I know a lot of people wondering what's going on specifically in my area. I mean, if I live in Eminence, what am I dealing with? Well, I think you're talking 55, probably mile-an-hour winds. If you live in Shelbyville, I have concern that you're going to be dealing with winds to 55 or 60. In Louisville, I think 50 to 55 mile an hour, maybe some 60s occurring along 64 right now. That is my concern here for the Louisville area. You know, really east end of Louisville looks like it would have a greater threat. And, you know, I was looking yesterday, worked through all the rainfall totals, and I know that there's some 7s out there in the east end of Louisville. I know Transylvania Beach, which is northeast side of Louisville, has seen 7 inches of rain. I mean, you really think about that. We were in a moderate drought just 2 weeks ago. And we went from really what was an insane amount of rain in April, then into a prolonged dry period, which took us into May, and then we came out of that, and, you know, like gangbusters in the month of July, where we've seen 7 inches of rain. And what that really does is that taxes a lot of these trees. So their root structures are now sitting in like mud.
Right.
And then you get, let's say you get a 50-mile-an-hour wind move across the area. Maybe that doesn't cause a lot of damage with some storms, but in this scenario, with those roots being so wet, I think it's going to knock down quite a few trees.
Exactly what happens when you get too much of a good thing in a short period of time. So watching out for some of those winds, which are pretty fierce, around 50 to 60 miles an hour, going down to the south and to the east. Here's a quick tracker on that storm. The severe thunderstorm warning continues through 3 o'clock, including Louisville Metro. So Fern Creek, 7 minutes away. Should be in Frankfort, 11, Taylorsville, 25, Lawrenceburg, 34 minutes. So along with a threat for some winds, as Mark was mentioning, we also have that flash flood warning for eastern Jefferson County, Oldham County, parts of Shelby County, southern Clark County, and that one will go until 5 o'clock. And we saw what happened. The pictures that came in on Sunday were almost heartbreaking in a lot of locations. We had a lot of those low-lying locations that got flooded. So if you live in one of those areas and you flooded on Sunday, the chances of that happening again, they're kind of likely here.
Yeah, Weather Service is really clear in their kind of assessment of this whole thing that we covered through Twitter, and we posted a little bit earlier. They're concerned about the potential for damaging winds, and they're very, very concerned about the flooding. And I will say, flooding at night is a serious, serious problem, and I think that the flooding potential tonight is really high. The flash flooding potential very, very high tonight, so it's something we're going to have to watch very closely. We got one of our web guys in here, Travis. Travis, if you could, when you go back into the newsroom, can we check Eastern Jefferson and Shelby County just to make sure that we don't have any power outages? So we've got our web team in here. Again, what we do is what we refer to as a multi-platform approach. We've got teams that cover the news side, the TV side. We've got people that cover the web side of things. And it looks like now we're starting to see a good signal here of that outflow boundary. Rick, this may be a sign that these storms may be losing some of their intensity. See that outflow boundary now? This is coming out of the storms near Borden, near Fredericksburg. And this could set the stage for the storms that come through later. If we get this outflow boundary and then it kind of stakes its claim, that outflow boundary then later could be where the storms realign and then move down there. These outflow boundaries, Rick will tell you, and Jeremy, they kind of tell you that I'm one of those people that actually loves radar. I tend to kind of look at it a lot. So seeing these types of things on radar for me are things that I tend to focus and note as things of concern. If this outflow boundary sets itself up over southwest Louisville, remember what we have aloft is winds out of the west, so that should shift that outflow boundary a little bit northeast, and that I think is going to set the stage as we go towards the nighttime. Re-intensification, number one, and a real legitimate flooding threat. If they set up and move down that boundary into Louisville, we got a serious problem.
Especially in those locations that had not seen any thunderstorms, Mark. They're completely untouched by storms, which means they had more fuel, more energy, we call it CAPE, down in those areas. And that means when those storms come in there, they're going to have not only the extra CAPE, but also that wind energy, because right now we're not working with all the wind energy that will be in play later on this evening and overnight tonight, Mark. And
I'm going to take a look outside at our tower cam here real quickly. This is what it looks like from our downtown tower cam, and you can see we are covered now. The rain shield is about to hit the downtown Louisville area. You notice if you look on the right part of your screen there, you can actually see that little shelf cloud here that's off towards the south of the downtown area, and particularly making a much, much better move on the eastern side of the city. I really think that these storms may be going outflow dominated, and traditionally in this kind of a scenario, that may mean that that severe weather threat may be coming down and lowering just a little bit here. So some positives that we're seeing here. Louisville remains under a severe thunderstorm warning here. We have also a flash flood warning that remains in effect. This includes Clark, Floyd, Oldham, Jefferson, Shelby County. Carroll County was also put into the flash flood warning here moments ago. Severe thunderstorm warning remains in effect here for a good chunk of the area with a severe thunderstorm watch, and our severe thunderstorm warning for Jefferson County remains in effect here until 3:05 p.m., so about another 15 minutes or so. We haven't actually got any reports thus far of winds that actually have met severe criteria in the 60-mile-an-hour range. In fact, the Kentucky Mesonet, which measures their winds, has their peak gust right now for Kentucky at 50 miles an hour coming out of Oldham County here. So that is one positive here. In a sense, it doesn't look like we're talking about a destructive scenario right now. More looks like we're talking about 40 to 50 mile an hour winds here, but with saturated grounds, that in a sense poses its own threat. Lightning that is virtually continuous out there as well. And Rick has got to look at those storms here again for you. And Rick, I'm going to head over to the wall here so we can do a quick storm track on there. And as we storm track, you know, since we're struggling to get a lot of reports of damage here out of the area, I'm probably going to hold this for maybe another 5 minutes or so and then send back to programming. One of my things I hate to do is I hate holding you hostage from your programming if I don't feel like there is a major severe weather threat. So, Rick, let's do a track here. First with the lightning strikes on there, obviously you saw it was just insane. But the storms head from Borden into Louisville, into the Middletown area, Shelbyville, and then through the Pleasureville area. This is what we have going on right now. The area of the strongest winds, I think, is probably going to be east of Louisville, but notice the line itself is not showing that bowing segment anymore. It's starting to flatten, which means in this kind of scenario that the winds may be coming down a little bit. Newburgh, 2 minutes from now. Mount Washington, 16 minutes from now. Taylorsville, 17 minutes from now. Lawrenceburg, 24 minutes from now. And in the Bloomington area, around 30 minutes from now. And the line is starting to flatten. However, we just got a new warning here, Rick, for south of that line. It looks like to me includes Bullitt County, southern part of Jefferson County, includes Spencer County, Looks like it includes Nelson County and then the eastern part of Shelby County. Rick, what kind of, I assume about 50 or 55. However, with the wet ground, I think that 55 can, in a sense, like today, maybe a 50-mile-an-hour wind could act more like a 60-mile-an-hour wind because the root system on the trees is it's just mush. I mean, you walk out on your lawn, it's just a mess.
Yeah, they have been compromised, so that's something you want to keep in mind. And we've been taking a beating lately the past couple days, just round after round of rain. Some areas getting over a half a foot of rain, which is why, as we mentioned, it's not going to take much to bring down trees. It's not going to take much to cause some additional flooding in areas. So just make sure you keep that in mind. We
just got a new flash flood warning here, by the way, Rick, so I want to get that info across. This one specifically now is going to include the western side of Louisville as well. Weather Service is doing a really good job with this one. They're being very, very aggressive with the warnings because I think, simply put, they know it's not going to take much rain to produce flooding. So this one is now for western Clark, Floyd, northern Harrison, and southern Washington County until 6 p.m. That'll take us 3 more hours. They're talking about ditches overflowing very, very quickly, overflows at intersections, specifically some areas that they're talking about flood prone would be the southern ditch overflows onto Miners Lane, viaduct overflows at the intersection of West Hill and 6th Street. So there's obviously many concerns here with the potential for flooding from all of these storms.
Okay. We also want to keep in mind we have most of Kentucky and under that severe thunderstorm watch until 8 o'clock later on today. With inside that watch, we have a whole bunch of warnings all stacked up from Henry down through Oldham, Floyd, southern Clark County, Jefferson County, most of Bullitt County, northern Nelson County, Spencer, Shelby County, all under severe thunderstorm warnings, which will continue for the next several hours. Some of the latest warnings coming out for winds around 60 miles an hour, and also the potential for some hail. Not too much concern with that, given the actual setup. We don't have the wind energy needed to keep all those hailstones aloft to get them to grow large, but there could certainly be some smaller hail just because there's so much instability and juice out. You walk outside, it's almost like you're going to melt. It is so warm, so humid, and that is the fuel for these thunderstorms.
And I'm going to show you here real quickly, guys, how much more until we're to start the next program, because what I'd like to do here is leave out of this shortly. Okay, so we're going to go for this for about another 90 seconds or so. This is a latest high-res data showing thunderstorms continuing near the metro through 5. And then you can see quite clearly we go into a lull. And I think this is where the concern will come in as we go through the overnight hours, is a secondary area. And this is a huge cluster of big thunderstorms moving into our area. And what you can see here is it's not just necessarily the severe threat here. It's going to be the potential for extreme rainfall and really distinct flash flooding threat tonight. The Weather Service will have another conference call at 6:30 tonight with regards to this, but I think as far as we go at around 2 a.m. tonight, we're going to get back into another scenario, and we'll see excessive rain. Difference for tonight is going to be how this air mass recovers, because we've been rained down, and you have to actually recover the air mass to see severe weather during the night. If it does, the wind energy is better tonight, can produce some severe weather. But the flooding threat is a legitimate flash flooding threat. Storms continue to move through Louisville right now. We've got thunderstorms on the east side of Louisville moving through Shelbyville, heading towards Mount Washington and Lawrenceburg. Wind gusts to 60 miles per hour in play in those areas. Flooding is going to continue to be an issue on the eastern side of Louisville through Shelby County. Even Mount Washington, you've seen 5, 6, 7 inches of rain. Please use caution on any flooded roads. We will have continuous updates throughout the afternoon and an update on WDRB News at 4.